I work nights at a 24-hour market off the interstate. If you've ever done a graveyard shift, you know the soundtrack. The hum of the coolers, the coffee pot baking on the burner, the door chime that jumps an octave at 3 a.m. when you're tired enough to hear things that aren't there. It's not glamorous, but it's routine, and routine feels safe. Before we dive in, do me a quick favor. Like, subscribe, and share if you're into real late-night horror. And tell me in the comments, have you ever gone through something creepily similar? I want to hear your story. It was early March. There was dirty snow piled up around the lot, and the wind had the kind of edge that makes your ears sting. My shift ran 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. The first 3 hours are always the same. Long-haul drivers grabbing caffeine, night nurses buying energy drinks. One guy in a reflective vest who buys the same scratch-off ticket and tells me he's due. At 2:09 a.m., a man walked in wearing a green cap. And by sunrise, I knew he'd been waiting for me. Not bright sports team green. Faded, sun-beaten, with little white shamrocks stitched on the front. He had one of those faces you can't describe afterward because nothing stands out. Not tall, not short, not big, not thin, just average. The kind of man you could pass a dozen times in a day and never remember. He didn't go to a specific aisle. He drifted. Chips, then jerky, then back to the coolers. Every time I looked up, he was already looking at me, and then he'd be studying prices like he'd always been doing that. You know that feeling when your stomach gets cold before your brain can name why? That. He finally brought up a coffee and a pack of gum. Cash. His hands were clean, nails trimmed. The hat shadowed his eyes. "You off at 7?" he asked, like we were picking up a conversation we'd paused earlier. My first thought was that he'd seen the schedule. Sometimes we forget to flip the binder closed behind the register. I said, "Yeah." He nodded once, like I'd confirmed something he already knew. "Cold night to be walking." "I drive," I lied. My old Civic had died in December. I'd been bussing it and then hoofing it the last 2 blocks. He left. No small talk, no thanks. Just the chimed exit, wind rushing in, and the smell of cold coming through the door. At 3:16 a.m., he came back. Same hat, same drift, no purchase this time. He walked a slow loop like he was checking that we hadn't rearranged anything without his permission. He paused by the magazine rack and picked up a hunting guide, didn't open it, put it back, then stopped at the window that faced the pumps and watched the empty lot like something was about to happen out there if he waited long enough. "Can I help you find something?" I asked, keeping my voice level. He turned his head, but not his body. "No." Then, after a beat, "You should change your route. 2 blocks is long in the dark." There are sentences that sound like advice but land like a threat. That was one of them. He left before I could decide what to do with the police non-emergency number taped under the counter. When you work nights, you learn to grade weird on a curve. Drunk is one color, high is another, lonely is a third. You get more than you'd think. This wasn't any of those. At 4:02 a.m., while I was restocking the cigarettes, the store phone rang. Our phone almost never rings. Deliveries come at 10 a.m., my manager never calls at night, and people who are lost just walk in and ask. "Sunmart, 3rd and Dalton," I said. A pause. I could hear wind, open air, not a car, not an office. Then a man's voice. "Is she still on till 7?" The line went dead before I could ask who was calling. I stood there with the receiver still to my ear, listening to the dial tone bleed into silence. At 6:47 a.m., I cashed out my till, counted pennies, straightened the gum, Did all the small closing rituals you do even when you aren't the one closing. Sunrise was a rumor behind the clouds. I zipped my coat, pulled my hat down, and told myself I was being dramatic. I walked those 2 blocks 100 times. I stepped out into the morning. That isn't really morning yet. The cold shoved my breath back into my face. The bus stop was a block away, but my route home went the other direction. I could cut left down an alley to shave off a minute, or go right and stay on the street with the streetlights. I went right. You ever try to walk normal when your instincts want to sprint? Your body does this weird compromise where your pace is technically regular, but every muscle is braced like you might be asked to run a 40-yard dash in the next 2 seconds. My boots squeaked on packed snow. I kept my eyes on the corner. He was there. Green cap, hands in pockets, like he'd always been there, like the street had grown him overnight. He didn't move toward me. He just pivoted slowly as I reached the intersection, lining himself up with my path. I didn't break stride. I made my face go flat and bored, like I hadn't noticed him at all. At the crosswalk, I tapped my phone like I was answering a text. "Morning," he said. I didn't answer. If you answer, you're in a conversation. If you're in a conversation, you've agreed to rules you didn't set. I changed the route, stepped into the street like I was going to cross, then cut back, doubled around the block. I could feel him behind me, without hearing him, which is somehow worse than footsteps. People think the scary part is running. It isn't. The scary part is choosing not to. My building is older, 3 floors, heavy glass front door with a buzzer that works when it feels like it. The kind of place where the mailboxes still have little clear windows for your last name on paper. I don't keep my name there. I keep a blank slip. I reached the door, pretended to fumble my keys, and hit the buzzer for 302 like I'd forgotten mine. I don't live in 302. I don't know who does. Sometimes you gamble. A voice crackled through the speaker. "Hello?" "Babe, it's me," I said, projecting cheer and familiarity like a costume. "Can you buzz me in?"
The lock thunked. I didn't look back. I pushed through and took the stairs, fast but not running. On the landing, I could see through the glass, the green cap at the bottom step. He'd followed me right up to the door. He didn't try the handle. He didn't buzz anything. He just stood there looking up at me through the glass. Up close, the shamrock was fraying at the edges. I held eye contact. If I was going to be a person to him, I wanted to be a person who could look him in the face and not flinch. He lifted one hand like he might wave. Then he didn't. He turned and walked away toward the corner, casual as smoke. I stayed where I was until my legs started to shake and I had to sit on the stairs. I don't know how long I sat there, listening to the old building breathe. When I got to my actual apartment, I locked the door, then put the chain on, then dragged a chair under the knob because it felt like doing something. I didn't sleep. I called my manager at 9 and told her I couldn't do nights anymore. She said we could talk schedule swaps, that people always want days. She sounded like she wanted to ask why, but she didn't. When I came in that evening to pick up my next week's schedule, she said, "Weird call last night. Guy wanted to know if you were closing alone. I told him we don't give that information." "Did he say his name?" She shook her head. "Just hung up when I pushed back. You okay?" "I'm fine," I lied, because what else do you say that doesn't sound like a story you made up to scare yourself? A man in a green hat looked at me and asked a question and said a sentence that wasn't a threat but felt like one. He stood outside my door and then left. The next morning on the bus, I saw a man in a green cap 3 rows ahead. My throat did that thing where it closes without asking me first. Then he turned his head, and it wasn't the same man. Different nose, different mouth, same hat. Or maybe there are a lot of green hats in the world, and mine just has a shamrock problem now. I changed my route home again. I don't cut through alleys. I don't wear my name tag outside work. I keep my keys in my hand like they could be a weapon if they had to be. I know the faces of the people on my floor now. I learned 302's name so I can thank them properly if we ever meet. I never saw him again, in a way I could prove. Some nights I think I see the cap on the other side of the street, and some nights I think I see a shadow that doesn't match the body casting it, and most nights I tell myself I'm fine. Here's the part that sticks with me. He never touched me, never yelled, never crossed the line that makes police paperwork easy. He stayed exactly on the seam between legal and wrong, like he'd drawn it himself. And if you've never been watched by a stranger who knows your schedule, it's hard to explain how that seam can feel like a cliff edge under your feet. So that's my story. If you're watching this alone at 2 a.m., turn on a light you forgot about. Walk the long way under the streetlights. And if anyone ever asks you what time you get off, tell them you're not sure, and keep walking.
The last bus of the night isn't supposed to stop for anyone outside the route, but it stopped for her. I've worked the evening shift at the same coffee shop for 5 years, closing, counting tills, mopping floors that never really get clean, locking up while the pastry case fogs. By the time I wash my hands and pull on my jacket, the street out front is mostly empty. The last bus is routine. It's the same driver with the tired eyes and cinnamon gum. It's the same hiss of the doors, the same plastic seats with the same split in the cushion near the middle. I know the route by heart. It's not romantic, it's just how I get home. That night, I was the only one waiting at my usual stop. Rain came down steady enough to flatten everything. Not a storm, just that heavy, soaking kind that gets into your sleeves and the seam of your shoes. When the bus rolled up, the windows were fogged. I climbed on, nodded to the driver, flashed my pass. He didn't bother to look up. He never does for me. I took my regular seat, halfway back on the right. The whole bus smelled like diesel and wet rubber and the sweet bite of that cinnamon gum. The heater rattled. The floor was slick under my sneakers. I settled in and let my body loosen the way it does when you've been on your feet for 8 hours. Outside, the light smeared into broad streaks on the glass. Red from the traffic, pale yellow from shop windows, green overhead at intersections. The wipers kept a steady rhythm. I watched the same blocks I always watch. The liquor store with the broken sign, the laundromat that never seems to close, the church with the banner for Sunday services, the vacant lot that collects trash along the fence line. I could tell what stop we were at without looking up. We were maybe 10 minutes from my stop when the bus braked hard. Not a gentle slowdown, a sudden press that nudged my shoulder off the seat back. My head came up fast. No car had cut us off. No flashing lights ahead. We had pulled over at a random corner. No shelter, no posted sign, no bench, no painted curb. Just a curb, a puddle swallowing the gutter, a streetlight with a weak halo that didn't reach the sidewalk. Someone stood there in the rain. A woman. Hood up, head down, hands at her sides. She didn't wave. She didn't step forward. She didn't try to make herself seen. She just stood there like she'd been planted. The driver stared at her through the glass. He didn't move for a beat. Then he thumbed the switch, and the doors opened with that soft cough of air. He didn't ask for a fare. He didn't say a word. She climbed aboard. Water ran off her jacket and hit the rubber mat in little streams. Her shoes squeaked once against the floor. She didn't look at the driver. She didn't look at me. She walked the aisle without any hurry and went straight to the very back. Far left. The last row. Directly behind me. I kept my eyes forward, but everything in me stiffened. I don't scare easily on buses. You get odd people sometimes, sure, but it's usually noise, not danger. This felt wrong in a way I felt in my teeth. There was a smell, faint, but not the usual city wet dog stink, not like soaked clothes. It was the smell of standing water that doesn't move, the kind that grows things. The smell you get when you pass a drainage ditch in summer and try not to breathe through your nose. Only this was cold and fresh rain, and the bus was warm,
so the smell lifted in damp waves. I sat there and watched the driver in the rearview mirror. He glanced up once, quick, then kept his eyes locked on the road like he was doing a test. The bus pulled back into traffic. The heater droned. The wipers kept going. The sound changed, though. The bus got quiet in a way that didn't feel like normal quiet. No muttered phone calls, no loose coins rolling, no radio leak from someone's earbuds. Just that mechanical heartbeat and the breath of the bus itself. I told myself not to be stupid. I told myself I was tired, that rain at night messes with your head. I stared at the route map above the window, even though I know every line of it. My stop got closer. I could see the gas station near it in my mind, and the little glow of the ATM. It felt like walking down a hallway that got longer as you moved. We didn't stop again until my neighborhood. The driver rolled up to the sign by the gas station, pulled the lever, and the bell chimed from above the door. It was my press. I remember the sound was too sharp in the quiet. It made me jump like I had set off an alarm. That's when I heard it, right behind my head, close enough that the hairs on my neck lifted. A slow, wet inhale. Not a sniff, not a cough, a breath that sounded like it had to move through water before it reached lungs. Thick, patient. My body wanted to twist all the way around, but I made myself move slow. I turned my head just enough to catch her in the corner of my eye. Her hood was down. Her hair hung heavy and dark, clumped into ropes. It wasn't just wet from rain. It looked soaked through to the center, dragging her head down. Water dripped steadily from the ends and pattered on the seat, on the floor. The drops hit in a rhythm that didn't match the wipers or the engine. She was smiling, not a big grin, just a small, fixed curve that showed too many front teeth. Her cheeks were too pale for someone who just walked in from the cold. Her lips looked colorless, like she didn't have any blood left in them. I couldn't see her eyes straight on, but in the glass I caught a dark shine that made me look away. The doors opened. Air moved over my hands. The driver spoke, and it sounded wrong after all that silence. "You're getting off?" Loud, forced, like he had to push the words out. I looked at him, and he was staring straight ahead, both hands on the wheel, knuckles tight. He didn't turn around. He didn't check the mirror. He didn't look at me. He just held the bus open like he was doing exactly what he was told. I stood up. My legs felt thick, like I had to remember how to use them. My bag strap caught on the armrest, and I almost sat back down, which sent a stupid jolt through my chest. I freed it, moved into the aisle. As I passed, she leaned forward, only an inch or two, just enough that I could feel the cold off her. Her breath touched the side of my face. Wet air, like the inside of a cave where water collects. Her voice was soft, like she was speaking into my hair. No breath on the words, just the sound. "Don't walk by the river tonight." Every word slid past my ear and settled somewhere under my skin. No threat, no anger, not even concern. It was just a fact laid down in front of me. I didn't say anything. I didn't nod. I didn't dare look her full in the face. I stepped down to the first stair. My shoe squeaked on the rubber edge. For a split second, I thought I was going to slip. My hand hit the pole, and that metal felt like ice. Outside, the rain had thinned to a fine mist. The air still carried that wet smell, but it was clean. My jacket stuck to my arms. The streetlights made a weak pool on the pavement. The gas station was open. A man in a yellow vest smoked outside by the ice chest. He didn't look at me. The doors folded closed behind me. The bus eased away from the curb and rolled forward. I turned to watch it go because I always do. Habit, I guess. I watch it hit the next intersection, signal, and disappear down the main road. But it didn't make it that far. 2 blocks down, the taillights reached a patch of dark where the streetlights don't overlap, and they just weren't there anymore. Not like the bus turned or sped up. One moment, red glow edging the wet road. The next, nothing. The darkness didn't swallow the light. The light just stopped existing. I stood there a second longer than I should have. The driver could have taken a detour, the line could have ended early. There were explanations if I wanted them. None of them felt like they mattered. There's a path along the river that cuts 20 minutes off my walk. I use it all the time because by then I just want my shower and my bed and my own noise. I didn't even glance that way. I put my head down and took the long route under the streetlights, block by block, counting the cracks in the sidewalk, watching for cars that sprayed puddles. I kept my hands out of my pockets because I wanted my fingers free. I told myself to breathe slow. Halfway home, the rain stopped. I could hear the change. The air got lighter, but the sound of water didn't go away. It followed me. Not the patter of drops in the leaves, a steady drip that kept pace with me. 5 or 6 steps, and then a drop. 5 or 6 more, and another. It didn't come from above. It was close, like it was just behind my right shoulder. I kept turning my head to check the gutter, the roof lines, the trees. Nothing. Dry branches. Empty curb. Every time I paused, the drip paused. When I started walking, it started again, unhurried and exact. I didn't run. I didn't want to find out what happened if I did. I kept the same pace I always use when I pass people at night. Fast enough to get where I'm going, slow enough not to draw attention. My keys were loud when I took them out, louder than they've ever been. My front door has a sticky lock that usually takes a wiggle. That night, the key turned smooth. I stepped inside, closed the door, and pressed my palm flat against it like I could hold it shut with skin and bone. The apartment was dark and quiet. I didn't turn on the overhead light right away. I listened. Nothing outside, no footsteps on the stairs, no engines. The drip wasn't there anymore. The only sound was the old ridge kicking on, and my own breath, still not steady. I went to the window that faces the street and pulled the curtain with 2 fingers. The sidewalk was empty. The river path was just a line of darker dark between the trees. No bus, no people, no movement. I stood there until my breath finally stopped scraping my throat on the way out. I took the longest, hottest shower I could stand. Water pounded my shoulders and ran off me in sheets. I kept waiting to smell that pond stink again, to see the drain back up, to watch the water climb my ankles. It didn't. Steam fogged the mirror. The bathroom smelled like cheap soap and lemon cleaner. I slept with the TV on, not for comfort, for noise that belonged to me. I woke twice to the sound of dripping and sat up fast both times. It was the kitchen faucet. It does that sometimes. I tightened it until the sound stopped. At 3 in the morning, I got up, checked the locks, and looked through the peephole, even though there's never anyone there. I didn't walk by the river. I haven't since. I take the long way, and if it's late, I call a ride. Sometimes waiting on the corner, I smell something that makes me think of algae and old water, and I tell myself it's nothing. Sometimes I hear the bus a few blocks away, and I look for its lights and don't see them. I still ride the last bus home. The driver still chews cinnamon gum. He doesn't make unscheduled stops anymore, at least not when I'm on board. When we pass that random corner, the street light there flickers once. Not always, just enough that I keep track. And every time the doors open at my stop, I feel a breath on my cheek that isn't there, and I step down fast, and I don't look back.
The address wasn't on my delivery route.
and it shouldn't have existed at all. I work part-time for a local courier service. We're the ones who handle the weird jobs, things that don't quite fit in regular mail and aren't big enough for freight, legal papers that need a signature, fabric swatches, architectural samples, stuff like that. It's not glamorous, but it pays steady. After a couple of years, you get to know your run like muscle memory. I can tell you every left turn, every pothole, every business that always leaves the backlight on. I don't need the GPS anymore. That night, I was about halfway through my route when my dispatcher called. It was unusual, since most of the time she just texts updates. "Got a quick add-on," she said. Her voice was flat, like she was already moving on to something else. "Address?" I asked, already bracing to see if it was way out of the way. 1121 West Grafton Road, small box. I frowned. "That's not on my sheet. Is that even my zone?" "It's a rush job," she said, and before I could ask anything else, the line went dead. I sat there at the light, box cutter still in my pocket from the last drop. Dispatchers don't usually hang up on me. They answer questions. They make sure things are scanned right. But fine, it wasn't like I had a choice. West Grafton isn't somewhere you want to be at night. It's mostly warehouses and old storage yards, the kind of industrial strip that shuts down after 5. At night, it's nothing but the sound of a forklift somewhere in the dark, or a truck backing into a dock. You don't even see people walking dogs there. It's just dead space. I drove down the stretch until my GPS said I'd reached 1121. But where it should have been, there wasn't anything. No building, no mailbox, not even a driveway. Just a fenced-off empty lot with weeds pushing through cracked asphalt. The streetlight above barely worked. It flickered so slow it looked like someone turning a dimmer on and off. I double-checked the package. Small brown box, not heavy. The handwriting on the label looked rough, like whoever wrote it kept catching the pen on the paper. Under the address, in smaller, uneven letters, someone had written, "Ring twice." My gut knotted up a little. No buzzer, no door, no reason for anyone to be here. I thought about just calling dispatch back, but I didn't want to sound like I couldn't handle a job. So I parked on the shoulder, left the van idling, and got out. The rain had picked up into a steady mist that blurred everything under the streetlights. I held the box under my arm and walked up to the gate. That's when I noticed something I swear hadn't been there the first time I looked. A small metal intercom bolted to one of the fence posts. Old, rusted, no camera, just a speaker and a single button. I pressed it once. The noise that came back was so loud and sharp it made me flinch. A burst of static, high-pitched enough to sting in my ear. Then, cutting through it, a man's voice. Again. I swallowed and pressed it a second time. The padlock on the gate clicked, and the chain slid loose by itself. The gate creaked open just wide enough for me to squeeze through. My skin prickled as I stepped inside. The lot was mud and gravel, puddles catching the weak light. At the far end sat a single gray storage container, the kind you see on cargo ships. It looked old, streaked with rust, but someone had dragged it here and left it sitting on cinder blocks? That was it. No cars, no other buildings, no sign of life. I waited a second to see if someone would come out. Nobody did. So I started walking, my shoes squelching against the mud, each step too loud in the stillness. The closer I got, the worse it felt. There was a door cut into the side of the container, hanging just slightly open. A faint yellow glow leaked from the crack, barely brighter than candlelight. "Delivery," I called out, my voice rougher than I meant it to be. Silence. For a long moment, I thought maybe I imagined the voice on the intercom. Then from inside, "Leave it on the table." I pushed the door wider with my shoulder and stepped just far enough inside to see. A folding table sat in the middle of the container. Its metal legs were spotted with rust, but it held steady. On top were 3 small brown boxes identical to mine. Then I noticed the shelves. They lined the walls from end to end, stacked neatly with dozens, no, hundreds of the same boxes, every one the same size, every one plain. No labels, no names, just walls of sealed cardboard. The air smelled stale, like dust that hadn't been moved in years. I set my box on the table and stepped back. That's when the door slammed shut behind me. The sound cracked through the space like a gunshot. I spun around so fast my shoe slipped on the metal floor. My hand hit the shelf and a couple of boxes shifted, the cardboard scraping against itself. "Hey!" My voice echoed back at me, swallowed by the thick air. Then something shifted deeper inside the shelves. Not a person, not footsteps, just the slow slide of more cardboard, as if something had brushed against the boxes and set off a chain reaction. Then the voice came again, closer this time, right behind me, though I hadn't heard anyone move. "You're not on the list." My throat locked. I turned but saw nothing, just row after row of those blank boxes stacked neatly in the yellow glow. My pulse hammered so loud it hurt. Before I could move, the door behind me swung open on its own. The lot outside was waiting, silent and empty. The rain had stopped without me noticing. I didn't ask questions. I bolted for the van, mud splashing up my pants. My keys fumbled in my hand before I yanked the door shut behind me. The tire spun gravel as I peeled away, my chest aching from how hard I was breathing. Back at the depot, I slammed the van into park and stormed inside. My dispatcher looked up from her screen, her eyebrows pinched. "You're back early," she said. "You okay?" I dropped my manifest sheet on her desk. What the hell was that Grafton delivery? Her face went blank. "What delivery?" "1121 West Grafton Road. You called me, said it was a rush." She shook her head slowly. "We didn't have any Grafton runs tonight. Route sheet's the same as always." I pulled out my phone to show her the call log. My hand shook a little. The screen lit up, and the call wasn't there. Not even an unknown number. Nothing.
By midnight, the parking garage should have been empty, but someone was still moving around. I used to work in a downtown office building that shut its doors at 11 p.m. By the time we wrapped up, the lobby lights were dimmed, the cleaning crew was on the upper floors, and the only sound left was the vending machine buzzing near the elevators. Most of us parked in the attached garage because it felt safer than the street, and because it let you cut through the rain or the cold without dealing with it. I'd been doing that routine long enough that I didn't think about it anymore. Badge out at the turnstile, elevator down, walk to the car, drive home. That night, I was the last one out. I watched the security guard lock the main doors behind me. He gave me the same nod he always did. I waited for the elevator with the stupid poster about fire drills hanging crooked on the wall. The elevator smelled like dust and lemon cleaner. My car was on level 4, far corner. I always parked there because it was easy to remember and because no one bothered you there. When the doors slid open onto level 4, I expected the usual. Empty rows, oil stains, and that hum the fluorescent lights make when they've been on too long. Instead, there was a dark blue sedan parked in the middle row. It was facing the wrong way, angled across the line like whoever parked it didn't care. The headlights were off, no engine noise. The windows were tinted, but not dark enough to hide a faint light inside. I stepped out, and the elevator doors shut behind me. The sound echoed. The air in the garage was cool and smelled like exhaust and wet concrete. I could hear water dripping somewhere. Otherwise, it was dead quiet. I stood there for a second and told myself not to be weird. People park badly all the time. Maybe someone forgot something and came back. Maybe a tenant from the next building was using our garage. There were explanations. I started walking. My steps sounded too loud, so I shortened them. I kept my eyes forward and counted the pillars to the corner where my car sat. As I came even with the blue sedan, I let myself take one quick look. The driver's seat was empty. The light was coming from the back seat. A man sat there, perfectly still, head bent low. His hands were in his lap. He wasn't moving his thumbs. He wasn't scrolling. He was holding the phone face up toward the floor,
like the screen wasn't for him, like it was meant to light the space under his knees. The glow washed up over his chin and mouth and blurred his features. I couldn't make out his eyes. I couldn't tell if they were closed or not. He didn't look at me. I didn't slow down. I kept walking to my car. The keys were already in my hand. I hit unlock twice just to hear the chirp. I got in, locked the doors, and started the engine. The dash lights came on and made the inside of my car feel smaller. I checked the mirrors out of habit. In the rear view, the sedan's brake lights flared red. My stomach dropped. I told myself not to overreact. Maybe he was just adjusting something. Maybe his foot hit the pedal. I backed out of the space carefully, checked the lane, and started toward the ramp. The tires hummed on the concrete. The garage has those one-way arrows painted every few yards, and I followed them around like I always do. In the mirror, the blue sedan rolled out of its spot and pulled into the lane behind me. No turn signal, no hurry. It matched my speed without closing the gap. I took the first curve down toward the exit, and the sedan took the same curve, the same distance back. I felt my hands tighten on the wheel. I set my speed a little slower than usual to see if it would pass. It didn't. It stayed with me. Same pace, not getting closer, not dropping away. At the bottom, the exit gate waited with its yellow arm and the card reader. There's a camera pointed at the lane and a little speaker that never works. Most nights I roll up, scan my pass, the arm lifts, and I go. That's it. This time, I could feel the car behind me like pressure between my shoulder blades. I pulled up close to the reader. The sedan rolled to a stop behind me and stayed there. No honk, no inching forward, just sitting. The engine sound was low, steady. I kept my eyes on the card reader because I didn't want to look in my mirror again. I took a breath I could feel in my throat, held my badge up to the scanner, and heard the beep. The arm lifted. I drove forward. I couldn't help it. I checked the mirror as I crossed the line. The blue sedan didn't follow me out. It stayed at the gate. Then, slowly, it reversed. Not fast, not like someone realized they forgot their wallet, deliberate. It backed up the ramp, one length at a time, tail lights washing the concrete, until it slipped out of sight around the curve, farther into the garage. I turned onto the street and didn't go straight home. I took a left I never take and cut through side streets. I watched the mirrors at every light. I changed lanes when no one else was around. I drove longer than I needed to just to see if anyone was on me. No one was. The streets were empty. I parked 2 blocks from my place and walked the rest. I didn't like doing that, but I wanted to see if anyone turned onto my street after me. No one did. The next morning, I went straight to building security. The day guard was on duty, different guy than the night before. I told him everything. Level 4, blue sedan, wrong direction, man in the back seat holding his phone like a flashlight, brake lights, following me to the gate, reversing back into the garage. I half expected him to wave it off. He didn't. He typed for a while and pulled up logs. He shook his head. He said no blue sedan logged in after 9 p.m. last night. He clicked through a few screens. No activity on level 4 after 10:40. What about the cameras? I asked. He made a face like he was bracing for my reaction. Those cameras were temporarily offline for maintenance. Level 4's been scheduled for a firmware update. How long? I said. He scrolled. Started at 8:15 p.m., cleared at 5:12 a.m. So there was no record of a car entering, no video of that level, nothing that proved I saw what I saw. The night guard checked his log when he came in and said the same thing. No incident, no report, nothing unusual. I didn't push it. I knew how it sounded. A car that wasn't there on paper, a man who didn't move, lights that reacted at the exact wrong moments.
It would come out like I was tired and stressed and saw something that wasn't there. It would get me a suggestion to take a couple days off and maybe talk to someone about it. I changed one thing. I stopped using level 4. I stopped using the garage, period. I started parking on the street, even if it meant a longer walk or getting rained on. I'd take a ticket over that feeling of a car closing up behind me in a dead garage with the cameras down and no one around to see. I still finish late sometimes. I still hear the elevator doors slide open on level 4 when I pass the lobby. I still think about how quiet it was when those brake lights came on in my mirror, and how the sedan didn't leave when I did. It chose to go deeper instead. I park on the street now.